The Immigration Department will also expect to see that as a resource, the business has got funds available to it. Either funds that are sitting in your bank account in France that can be transferred into Hong Kong whenever they are needed, or funds that have been transferred to Hong Kong to finance your early business activities. Usually about 6 months' worth of cash flow will suffice to satisfy the Immigration Department in this regard. So how much cash investment is like asking how long is a piece of string. But it's one key resource that the Immigration Department are expecting to see, because they don't want to approve a visa application sponsored by a new business, a new company that is going to close its doors after a few months because it doesn't have the necessary level of finance available to it to sustain itself during the early part of its establishment endeavours here. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about permitted activity as a visitor, and then the opportunity to come to Hong Kong as a visitor to establish a new business or to pre-relocate for, to engage in activities prior to relocating here. And what is the situation in relation to any kind of activities that you've engaged in as a visitor in anticipation of establishing the business and making an application for a residence visa subsequently. And there's a problem, there's a tension in the way that Hong Kong immigration policy is administered in relation to the business investment visa. Because if it's a new company situation, the Immigration Department expect to see that you have got all the necessary pieces in place to allow the approvability test to be satisfied. And the way that the application process is administered, the Immigration Department, in a sense, tacitly encourage you to engage in activities in Hong Kong that are not commensurate with your conditions of stay as a visitor. Because the test is that you need to show benefit to Hong Kong, but you can't join in the business until you secure the consent of the Immigration Department. And you can't secure the consent of the Immigration Department until you can show benefit to the Immigration Department. And you can't show benefit without joining in the business, and you can't join in the business until you've got the consent of the Immigration Department. So this is this tension. And the way the Immigration Department solve this problem is very pragmatic. What they say is this: if you're here as a visitor and you're engaging in activities which are squarely within the realm of a business investment visa, if you don't have an application in the system, you're vulnerable to prosecution for breach of conditions of stay. But if you have an application in the system, they close their eyes to any transgressions. So the lesson here is that if you've decided that Hong Kong is where you're going to be doing business, and you have a need for any person associated with that business to have an immigration permission to do it, then you need to make your application as soon as you can. And once the application is in, you're effectively protected from any negative consequences as a result of engaging in activities which are not commensurate with your conditions of stay. On the other hand, you could make your application for a business investment visa even before you arrive as a visitor, showing to the Immigration Department everything that you intend to do, purely on the basis of a plan, and that's fine. In those situations, though, the Immigration Department will expect to see you capitalize your Hong Kong company at a much higher level than if you had just come as a visitor and began to put in place everything that you need to start your processes for the visa application whilst you're here as a visitor. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, great.